Hey guys, welcome to another Complete Developer Raw, a live show with Will and BJ. Hey, there we are. Awesomeness, awesomeness. Uh, so cool stuff going on with me. I did a 5K on Tuesday. Um,
Nice.
no, it was on the treadmill at the gym. It wasn't like I went out and like ran on the in the street. Well, like it wasn't an official 5K run or anything. I completed a 5K. It was good. Took me about 45 minutes to do it. I mean, I'm kind of slow, and I walked about half of it because I haven't done that in a long time. So, I mean, you remember when back 15 years ago when I wanted to start doing half marathons, I started building myself up. Yeah, I started off like I would run a quarter mile, walk a quarter mile, and just do that until I could like slowly build up.
Yeah.
Also
My
wore
my
that really
wife does
funny
some of that.
headband.
Yeah, my wife does some of that, I think, when she practices for marathons.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
So
sprint a mile or sprint a half or something and then do a little bit of walking and then sprint again.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's
it-
that's kind of what I did, and it wasn't really sprinting. I was actually running at the pace that I would like a long term pace. What I want to do is build myself up. On the off days, I do that sprint kind of thing where I run a bit harder and faster, but it's a lot like today. Before we got started, I went to the gym and did 20 minutes. There's a setting on the thing for it's called a sprint eights, where it's like 8 30-second sprints, but it slowly builds up. Um, and then you walk the rest. Of course, I bump up the walking to like a power walking pace so I can get a good workout with it as well. But yeah, no, I'm quite excited about that. That's pretty cool. And then also had a little bit of a personal breakthrough learning the guitar. I guess similar to you telling a joke in Russian would be I actually like on my own got a song like just um, the rhythm and everything just knocked it out, and I'm like, dude, that's awesome. So I was
yeah, that
quite
is
happy
when
with
it
that.
when it starts flowing.
Yeah, it just clicked, and I'm like, oh, and like even the chord transitions that I'd had trouble with, I was just doing them without problem, and I kept the rhythm going even if I kind of slipped up a little bit. Like that's something I've been really focusing on and trying to get going, and so just like it was like it just clicked, and I did that, and then I played another song with a similar rhythm, and I got it, and I'm like, hey, I'm making progress. I'm actually getting better at this. Like I'm not any good, but I'm yeah, I can understand what I'm playing and I'm enjoying it, so that's what matters. Well, what's going on
Uh,
with you?
well, my daughter went to her first Russian class Tuesday. I She had eye surgery 4 weeks ago tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And during her recuperation period, she was watching a lot of YouTube and, like in a dim room, with the computer dimmed down, like watching YouTube because she couldn't really get out and do anything. She had to watch, make sure she can get dirt in her eye, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I went in there and she had a notebook and she had been apparently watching one of the channels and like writing down the words and all that. And so I was like, well, if you're going to do that, you could just come to class with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's having a blast so far. So, um,
Yeah, it sounds like something she would really enjoy.
yeah, and I'm getting to where I can read it reasonably well now. Like it's not I don't read at the same speed as I do English, but it's like it's probably the speed that I read, say, if I've had 4 or 5 Jack and Cokes,
Do
right?
you read after having that many Jack and Cokes?
Like I'm just saying, like it's the it's not terribly slower than a reasonable speed at this point. Um, I don't have a way to quantify that. Like, you can't say, how many libraries of Congress you would read in a year or some crap like that. Like it's still slow, but
So are you like what,
it's
like
not
a
horrible.
third grade reading level now? I mean, what are we talking about? Reading level now?
I would say I'm probably getting probably first or second grade. Yeah,
Okay, okay, that's
you
still
know,
pretty awesome. That's better than I can do in any foreign language. So
yeah. So it's going well. Of course, then I was also presented with the chart of all the cases and declensions and all that stuff. And yeah,
Yeah,
It's brutal.
yeah,
I'm enjoying it.
that's cool.
So, in other news, I am really uh I'm really wanting to do some like meta programming in C sharp. I had to do some crap for work. Um, that involved a web API that was, an identity server was in the mix, and complex objects going back and forth, and I needed a test bed. And because of the way some of the stuff gets needs to get loaded into those objects, I couldn't use Postman.
Mm.
And so I built one in WinForms that would go out and find all the services that I had that were RESTful services, and would build up the UI so that I could enter the stuff, and I could save it to JSON and reload it and all that. And it would dynamically make the calls async
Oh wow.
and display. I mean, like, it was so slick. And I'm like, man, I miss doing crap like that. Like, it's horrible that I was in that situation, but I had a lot of fun with that project.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
So
don't have a whole lot of other updates on that.
here at the podcast, we are working on a better distribution of our workload. We got some really cool ideas, some neat things coming down the pipe that we're going to, I guess, sort of be getting into. Some stuff we think you guys are going to really enjoy. But because of that, Will selected the questions this week, and bear
And
with
Will
us.
did it in a hurry because Will is slammed.
Will hasn't done this before, and so
I like how you couch everything. It's like, hey guys, Will hasn't done this before. It's gonna be awful.
I didn't say that. I was gonna say they're gonna be longer than normal because normally when I get questions, I condense them, or I'll reword them.
Just say it's gonna be bad. It's all right.
I actually think they're really good questions. It's just I completely stepped away and let him do this. And so he's, they're good questions, but they are a bit longer than our normal questions. I noticed that when I was trying to put them into the presentation. So like you guys will see how much we've got there. But one of the new things we're doing is having more of a topic to talk about for the week or for the live show. So, Will, do you want to introduce our topic for us? I guess we're figuring out our workflow on this one.
Yeah, I could do that. So we're gonna talk a little bit about keeping a journal. I was fairly recently on the OK Productive podcast and talked about my journaling practices and stuff, which was really interesting because um, that's slightly more your thing than it is mine, even though I do it too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're just a little worse. You're a little bit more you're a little bit more into it than in some things than I would care to be, but that's all cool. So the thing is like keeping a journal will help you increase your self awareness and help you be able to look back on your personal history. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
really, really handy a lot of times for being able to troubleshoot stuff. So if you notice that, um, you're having a bad time this time of year, and you look back and last year it was bad this time of year, and it was bad the year before, that tells you something,
Mm-hmm.
right? That tells you next year when you're coming into this time of year, you might want to think about that and try to mitigate whatever is causing that. It lets you troubleshoot that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it helps you too to track both your emotions and your physical well being too, because they are related, and you may find that, oh, this time of year I tend to get sick, or I have allergy issues, and you know my emotional state is worse when I can't get out as much, or when I'm like, you know I don't know how to describe it, just like
Yeah.
just kind of fuzzy and just I hate that feeling, and I get kind of down doing that. The
Yeah.
other
Allergies
thing,
are bad on me like
yeah,
that too.
the other thing it can do is you can see when your emotions and your physical don't match up. So you may be feeling bad physically, like you may be having an issue with allergies, or you may get sick or something, but your emotional state is really good. And you can go back and you can look at your journal and see, all right, well, what was going on? Why was my emotional state really good then, even though I was feeling bad? So it's a great way to do that and see how you're responding to things. Um, the
Yeah.
big
And I,
Go ahead.
oh, Yeah, I would also say, when you write this stuff down, you've got to really be honest. So
Hmm.
when you have a journal, like nobody sees mine, and I don't think anybody sees yours either, except
Depending
for
on which
like if you,
journal.
yeah, like it's,
I
I
have
mean, you've
multiple.
shown me the occasional thing, and I've shown you the occasional thing,
Yeah.
but like those are not open to other people in
No.
general. And the point is, you can be blunt
Hmm.
and say things exactly like you mean them and say them the way you feel them. Like get that emotional content in there. That is extremely valuable when you come back, 6 months later and that problem's gone away and you can look at how you phrased it
Yeah,
because it'll tell you a lot.
that's very true. I you kind of have one journal. I keep multiple journals based on it's just the way that our we
Well,
organize things.
we talked about that on the OK Productive podcast because, as they were interviewing me, they were asking, if I had multiple journals or something to that effect. And initially I was like, no, I've just got the one. And then I started thinking about it. And I'm like, I really don't because I've got a monthly journal, right? I have my task tracker so I can look back at all the
Hmm.
stuff I've done in there. I have a workout list. I have a list of like what I've eaten and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And I think about all this stuff as lists, not as okay, this is a journal, but it's hey, it's here's all the stuff you did, bro.
Yeah. I mean that makes sense. Like I have my work journal where I write down stuff from work and that sort of thing. That's I don't really show that to many people even at work. Um but that's the one I'll probably show off most and pull a lot of stuff from. Then I have my personal like my only me journal, and then I've got journals for other things too. Like if I'm studying something, I'm like not school related, but I'll have a journal just tracking my progress with that, and thoughts that come up. And then I have kind of a thought journal and a poetry journal. They're kind of blended, really. Uh,
Yeah.
like just Wednesday, yeah, yesterday, I was riding the bus to work, reading a book, and this idea hit me. It was actually an image in my head, and I'm like, I got to write this down because I don't know if I'll remember it or not. And so I just stopped what I was doing, pulled out my journal, and wrote down. It actually ended up coming out in poetic form, but wrote down what I was seeing in my head. I thought that it was something I'm like, all right, well, I can like draw this, which I'm not very good at drawing, so I was more leaning towards painting. I was like, I could draw or paint this later, um, but just having that there, and that is one journal that I show to people a lot because it's like I said, it's my ideas, it's my thoughts, it's my this comes up. It's not really a lot of times where I write down my emotions, so sometimes that comes out in the thoughts and in especially when I write poetry in the poetry and stuff. But it's just like that raw idea place.
Yeah.
So
And you got to have a place for that. Like I have a little notebook I keep on my bedside table for a lot of that kind of stuff too.
hmm.
And yeah, like I just didn't think about the journaling. I, I didn't realize how much of it is really kind of integrated into my life.
Hmm.
And, as far as how much stuff is actually really trackable that
Yeah.
I do and I can trail it back. I mean, we do this with development all the time, right? Like you have a journal at work, it's called Git.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way, but I don't know why I didn't. I don't know that that says I'm terribly smart, but you know, there we are.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Um, the big thing, and we've kind of mentioned it a few times too, is you need to set aside time to go back and look through your journal. I know Will and I both do this, where we have times to go back and look, and we talk about this in several different episodes on planning and time management and things like that, but and goal setting, which going back and looking through your progress. But with your journal, this is going back and looking through your personal, I don't say personal progress if you're not actively working on something, even though you should be, but just your personal situation. And you can see things and you'll start to see patterns.
Yeah, and I did that, and this came up in the OK Productive episode as well. Like, I looked at some journal entries from a few years before, like right before I got on this call, right?
Hmm.
And I was looking and I realized that, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, there was more tension between myself and my wife then than there is now. Now, there wasn't that much then either, but there was a lot, there's a lot less now than there was even then. And
Hmm.
I started kind of thinking about it and I realized that that is before she got really serious about, running the marathons. It's before we had the podcast, I had the book. And it's it's kind of obvious in hindsight that we do a lot better when we're both doing hard stuff.
Yeah.
Like that actually really helps both of us out a lot. It gets rid of a lot of problems.
Yeah, well, it gives you a place to put your energy and your effort beyond your jobs and something to focus on. And
Yeah.
yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah, but you can't, you wouldn't have seen that except in hindsight. And you
Exactly.
don't hindsight is not 2020. Hindsight isn't there.
Yeah. No. All right. So moving on into, we got to work on our transitions for this, but our first
Yeah.
question.
All right. So here's our first listener question. And this was somebody that said, I've got a medical condition that causes me to have to go to the bathroom a lot. A couple of my coworkers have commented that I'm always in the bathroom. I really can't help it, and it doesn't matter what I eat. How should I handle this? Um, Now, I've had certain periods of time where my stomach has been off for extended periods of time. I know you have as well.
I'm surprised you
Yours has
gave
been
yourself this one.
yours. I think you've probably had it for a bit longer. But one thing I would do is I would straight up just tell the coworkers it's a medical condition. And personally, to make them a bit less obnoxious, I would probably give them a lot more detail than they want, and they'll never bother you about it again.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that is very true.
that's what
I
you do.
I do have a medical condition, um, which is well under control at this point. But there was a point in time where it was not, and yeah, it can be annoying. It can be really bad when it does flare up. Um, and what I would do is just tell them, hey, you know, this is flaring up. I have irritable bowel syndrome, so I'm like, hey, my IBS is flaring up. So if you can't find me, that's what's going on. And if they still complain, I start giving more and more details. Um,
Yeah. Well, it's
and
like when I had the hernia.
yeah,
Like people are saying stuff about that, and then after a while, you just go, look, here's what's going on. My intestine is getting pinched by the muscles in my abdomen because it's poking through. It might get necrotic, but, just like really gross them out, and they'll never bother you again.
yep.
Well,
That's
except there's always that one weirdo, but like the rest of them won't.
yeah. All right. So our next question. My boss is threatening to fire me if we don't get all of our tasks done by the end of the sprint, but we have more work than we can possibly do. What should I do? Get a new boss is like the snarky response that I really want to say.
That's what I
Um,
would say.
it really sounds like you need to break your stories down. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, if you're doing Scrum, it sounds like your stories are too large. If there's too many tasks to get done in one sprint, you need to look at, this is why we have sprint retrospectives. You need to go into your retrospective and say, hey, we're trying to do too much in this time frame. Do our sprints need to be longer, or do we need to take on less work per sprint? Sometimes you can't break a story down any smaller, and so you take on less work that sprint. But you need to look at that. Tasking is one of the hardest things to do, especially in Scrum, because like you task it out, and then you get in there and you find out, oh, it needs this or it needs that, and you're kind of set. So like go into your retrospectives with the attitude of, all right, the problem is this is what it sounds like to me. The problem is there's too many tasks to get done by the end of the sprint. So that means either our stories are too large or our sprints are too small. You
Yeah, I would
may
agree with that.
you may be able to change one or both of those.
Yeah, I would also say that if you have a threats and compliance based workplace, it's probably time to start looking.
Mm-hmm.
The market is really tight for developers right now, and you don't have to take that very long.
No, that is very true. That is definitely a thing where you can, like I said, my snarky comment is get a new boss, but there may be
Well, I
more
mean,
to it than that.
my thought is that if they're talking, if they're threatening to fire you, firing you is on their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so at like I won't put up with this at all. Like that if I get a threat, I'm gone. Um because that is my thought process is okay, this has come up. You're obviously thinking about this and it's come out of your mouth. You just gave me actionable intelligence to say that I need to make sure it happens on my timing, not yours.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, the whole threaten to fire because I mean,
It's
yeah,
like a
it's
bomb threat,
yeah.
right? Like the people that threaten it, they're doing it to get a reaction and they're probably
Well,
not going to do it, but
it's also a matter of like, are you legitimately slacking, and this is just a bad manager, but like their higher ups aren't going to actually allow them to do it, or is it this is a company culture? Because if it's
right.
just a bad manager, then that's a different story. Um, you know, yeah, I would take it up with their higher up. But if this is a company culture of of that, then no, that's the time to start looking. I
Yeah.
mean, start working on your resume. We've got a lot of episodes about
Well,
that.
and there's a guy that wrote a book on preparing for software development interviews too that's coming out in August, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, all right, guys. If you have any questions, you can email them to us at neckbeards at completedeveloperpodcast.com. Hey, while I'm thinking about it, Will, what do you think about creating a special email just for comments?
I can do that. I can make an alias. Easy enough.
All right. So we'll work on that. Neckbeards will always come to us because
You want it to be like comments at completedeveloperpodcast.com?
that sounds good. That sounds good.
I will
So
put that in my task tracker and then I'll look back on this task and go, why didn't I do it more quickly? Because that's all the journaling I do
yeah,
is why didn't this get done? Ah, crap.
yeah. So we'll announce when that goes live. Until then, you can use neckbeards. Um, and speaking of emails, just a reminder: if we have read your comment on the show, send your email to waterbottle at completedeveloperpodcast.com. That way, just helps me track it.
And you got the email that said that worked?
Yes,
Okay,
and I
good.
forwarded myself another one from there.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry about
so
that.
cool. No, no, that works. This is our process, y'all.
It's
This
it's
is
great that we do the Administrivia live.
yeah.
That's classy.
All right, y'all. So we had a really great episode this week with our friend Saran. If you haven't seen it, well, I guess you wouldn't see it. If you haven't heard it, go listen to it. Saran is really amazing. She created a really awesome community that Will and I have both participated in. Coming up next week, we have an episode called Code for the Ages. When most of us finish a project, we don't really think much about it unless a problem comes up. However, once you've rolled an application out to production, there are certain things that you can expect at various points in time as the application ages. Like any other aging process, this will eventually result in system death. Now, that said, you can often expect certain things to happen as your application ages and extend the useful life of the application. In the episode, we discuss some of the things that can crop up when an application is in production for an extended period of time. So check that out. It's going to be really awesome. While I was reading that, I just thought about things that age well, like wine or cheese.
Yeah.
They
Or
they
things
do
that age
eventually.
poorly, like, my jokes and milk.
Well, I was gonna say, like, the wine and cheese do eventually come to an end of life when you drink or eat them. So
Yeah, I think well, cheese eventually gets really
yeah,
gets
well,
pretty rough, and wine turns to vinegar eventually, or something like it. It
if it's
doesn't.
not stored well, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
All right, guys, we're
we're ranting.
yeah, we
All
are.
right,
So we'll hop off here. We're gonna record another awesome episode, and we will talk to y'all next week.